Hi, and welcome, ladies, to the Girl Boss Method podcast. We record this live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. for our ladies inside the Girl Boss Method program. My name is Richu, and today we are joined by one of the ladies on the program. Her name is Sugathri, so she'll be adding in a bit of her experiences on this topic. And we'll be exploring the topic together. So just going to click forward so we can start through onto the title. So time-saving cardio options. Now, every week we do a check-in. So I check in with the ladies inside my program. We go through progress, we go through wins, we go through struggles, we go through any questions that need a little bit more help with or time to work on. And another question that I get the ladies to ask is what sort of topics they would like us to talk about, basically, on these education meetings. So this one was submitted, and the lady had asked about cardio, because within her program, she does have a portion of cardio at the end of her weight session. And she was asking about the days that she's very busy. And, I think also to add a bit more context, she found it maybe a bit mundane and boring, doing the cardio. So this lady was given 30 minutes of incline walking to do at the end of her session. Now, one of the reasons I put in incline walking as a style of cardio was actually just to help assist some of the options or some of the things that we're going to talk through in a moment. So I'll just go to the list. So why was there cardio in the program, and why might it be helpful? So it's going to help assist us when we are in a calorie deficit, when, for example, energy is already quite low. So if your calories have been lowered of recent, and you're aiming for that fat loss or weight loss, perhaps maybe there's a larger deficit because you've got a goal date in mind. It's pretty difficult eating less and then being expected to move just as much, if not more, to help assist that deficit. Something like doing an incline walk might be beneficial because harder, shorter forms of cardio, for example, might require more mental and physical energy. An incline walk, you're going to put yourself at a lowered risk of injury. So, for example, if you were to start running as part of your cardio and you were in a deficit, you might increase the risk of injury because, unfortunately, when we are in these deficits, our brains don't seem to function as well. And especially if it's a very large and, it's a deficit which is quite large, or if you've been dieting for a long period of time. So just for context, all of us have maintenance energy needs. And when we are trying to elicit fat loss or weight loss, generally we would be creating a calorie deficit. So there may be a couple of, maybe 100 calories or maybe a little bit more of a deficit. But there may be times, especially if you feel like you've got the mental capacity to do so, and also the lifestyle capacity, there may be times when that calorie deficit is larger. But it's not a good idea to do large for a very, very long time. But there will be short stints where we might look at adopting that technique. So again, another option. So obviously a lot of my ladies are business owners or very career driven. you know, there may be some extra work that they may need to do, whether that's reading, they may listen to podcasts, they might have visual things to watch back, or maybe, you know, if they've been dealing with clients themselves, they may have to kind of revisit conversations they've had, or view educational topics, that sort of thing. They might well even be listening or watching this live back on that treadmill. So in that essence, it's going to allow for some multitasking to occur. So Sugathri, for example, if you're working from home, which you do quite often, I think we've perhaps potentially discussed the option of a walking pad.
Yeah.
So there'll be times where you are on video calls, you might not have to be so involved, but you're often just sat there. And if you sat there and you know that you could be walking, wouldn't a desk pad be amazing? Because you can multitask. And one of the things that I do and my partner does is if we go for a walk outside, we try and enjoy the fresh air outside. If the weather's rubbish, we'll go in the gym and do our incline cardio. And quite often I'll be replying to messages on the treadmill, and things will come to me as well when I'm walking, like ideas will come up. And if I've got my phone in front of me, I can just kind of pop those in. So it's a bit safer than, let's say, having to whack out a run, right? Is it something you've tried, Sugathri?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with the walking thing. You kind of get new ideas, and like maybe something creative that you plan to do, or like maybe just anything that you might not think about when you're sitting down and doing nothing, or you're like concentrated doing your work. So I definitely agree with that. That's a good way of kind of get your brain working as well as obviously your body working as well.
Yes, exactly. Get the sort of thinking juices flowing. And that's probably really quite beneficial for you as well, because as well as having a full-time career, you are also working on developing your own business. You know, something that you're very passionate about and that you enjoy, and it allows you to be creative. Because for many of us, outside of work, we have maybe a little bit more time, and you want to dedicate that in different ways to sort of, you know, allow yourself some more fun, really, and maybe even allow yourself another opportunity to make more income. Yeah. So another reason why so this form of cardio, we could call it steady state. So when you are on a treadmill and you're doing your incline walk, ideally not holding on, ideally, you know, you want to be making sure that you're working hard, you're not just going for a stroll. So I always like to look at it as a fast-paced walk. So it's not a fast-paced walk where you could take off and start jogging. It's fast enough to kind of get you could hold a conversation, but you're not going to be massively out of breath, you know. It's hard enough that you feel like you're working, but you're not going to be gasping for air. And there's actually another reason why this might be helpful to do cardio like that, the steady state cardio. You could reduce potential added stress levels, and also this interesting hormone called cortisol. So have you heard of cortisol, Sugathri?
Yeah.
What's your experience or understanding of what cortisol is?
I think cortisol, if I'm not wrong, is call it the happy hormone. Is that right? Or am I confusing it with something else?
Yeah, okay. The happy hormone is endorphins.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. The complete opposite though, but it's endorphins. So endorphins are what we experience when we do things that feel good, and quite often we get that after that exercise high as well. But the hormone cortisol can be a stressor when you are doing harder exercise, and something like the steady state cardio or the incline walk is a bit like lower in demands in terms of stress. The response to cortisol basically can have an effect on like your ability to lose weight. I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
So it's understood as being like a stress hormone.
Mm.
And it can almost make you hold on you know, to water. The increase is not always harmful, but I think if you're repeatedly doing it, I don't think it's a good idea to constantly be in that very highly stressful physiological system. There are some issues that, you know, that might occur, but quite often they can be short term anyway. But yeah, this can be relevant, you know, in just sort of in terms of that hormonal imbalance as well. Again, chronic stress and slow down the potential for weight loss just due to that increase in that hormone. Okay. Right, let's move on. So I guess we want to know what other options. The main question here was the time saving aspect. So what other options are there? Now, if you find that you don't really like or enjoy walking, maybe you're not even fast-paced walking, so that's another conversation. But it might be worth opting for a different piece of equipment, because admittedly, for some people, gotta go and do this 30-minute walk on the treadmill, and it's just gonna be just horrible. For not for everyone, but for some people, and I can understand that. And do you know what? There is actually a time in my life where I did find that having to do that steady state cardio for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, or even an hour, especially when I was prepping for my bikini bodybuilding competitions, I would stick on a very easy, fun thing to watch. So maybe like a comedy series, or I would put on some really happy, vibrant, high energy music to help motivate me. But if we have a look at other options, you could always opt for a circuit with like a moderate level resistance. So something that's not going to feel like you're doing you know, a weight session or a heavy circuit session, but something that's a bit lighter. And again, it keeps things interesting. You know, you could kind of flow from one exercise to the other. And the moderate level is experienced throughout that circuit. So for example, you could have some low intensity half jacks. So if you think of like a jumping jack, you could do a half jack. You could do like a minute of that, and then you might go over and you might do press ups on your knees if you find that easy. After that, you might decide to do some knee lifts. So you could moderate it, not just with resistance, but also cardio based exercises that don't feel too demanding. And that's, you know, that's to say if you wanted to swap it out for that 30 minutes of walking. Another option is actually to reduce the amount of time you're exercising. Now, this is obviously going to increase that cortisol response. Not always a bad thing, but it's just to make sure that you've got adequate recovery between those actual HIIT sessions, because that's what we're moving on to next. So high intensity interval training is actually very, very popular, and it's a great tool to use, but it's not something that we want to rely on so much. One of the reasons why I don't necessarily prescribe lots of high intensity interval training or HIIT is sometimes it can increase you know, the risk of injury through excessive, you know, if you're doing it lots, you're going to elevate that cortisol, you're going to have increased fatigue, increase appetite. Potentially, if you're doing it hard and for long periods of time, you could actually have muscle loss. We don't want that. And also, when we're thinking about appetite and we're thinking about that higher intensity, especially if we're trying to lose weight or create that calorie deficit, you might find yourself ramping up your appetite. For those of you that are trying to put on weight, this isn't a bad thing, but for those of you that are trying to lose weight, ideally you don't want to start suddenly making yourself more hungry, because especially if you're not someone who's even prepared or know what you're about to eat, you might opt for things that feel very satiating at that point. You might opt for, it sounds ridiculous, but you might decide, you know what, I've just burnt all these calories. And quite often I find women get caught in this cycle. They then consume or reconsume what they've actually burnt, and then they actually hinder their weight loss efforts. So it's it's a tool. A couple of times a week, once or twice is fine, but even then only if you really truly enjoy it and you find that you're absolutely stuck for time. Personally, I would probably, I don't know if there's any link to this or any truth in me saying this, but maybe for the 30 minutes of cardio, you could do 10 minutes of interval training, could be an option. There is actually another form of exercise which is similar, called Tabata. Now, Tabata is a style of HIIT training, but it's more prescribed in a sense that you work to a ratio. You'll work, for example, hard for 40 seconds with a 20 second, a 20 second rest, or like lower intensity. That could be an option. Have you heard of Tabata training?
Heard of Tabata, but I don't know what it is. The word's popped up a few times.
Yeah. Oh, I guess. So I've said 40 seconds, but I think it actually is more 20 seconds of all-out exercise with 10 seconds of rest, and then you repeat that for a total of 4 minutes. So it's actually a prescribed form of exercise. So it's a quick way to get your heart rate up. And do you know what? Working at high intensity is not a bad thing. It's really, really good for heart health actually as well, as long as it's not contraindicated for you. It's definitely a really good way of getting that energy up, and we're going to increase that release of endorphin hormone as well, which I know that you're familiar with, and you were kind of thinking that's what we were talking about previously. Jump rope as well, so you could do, if you're really skilled. I'm not very skilled at jump rope, but that could be a fun way of getting some cardiovascular exercise in. Body weight exercises at home. Again, for example, for you, Sugathri, you do body weight Pilates exercises, so this could be an option. You could do this. Again, you want to make sure that you're working at that moderate level, so it's a swap out of intensity. You want to make sure that it's not just stretching exercise, but it's something where you do feel like you're working. Another one is dancing. I mean, yeah, you could go to a Zumba class, or you could literally go out and go to an event and have a good old dance off. Obviously, dancing and going out and stuff, quite often that involves, for some people, a bit of alcohol, a bit of Dutch courage, etc. But if a deficit is the key here, then ideally not. But yes, dancing in any format, having a good old dance off. And then also sprints on a rower, so a rower or a bike. So again, it's just that whole thing of changing up the equipment and working at a faster, harder pace. So that's all we have to think about really is, if you are in a harder deficit, just to sort of summarize, if you are in a harder deficit, do you really want to shorten your cardio exercise and work harder? especially if you are already feeling very energy poor? Or is it better to take, you know, the easier option, still obviously working out, by just doing a good old incline walk, or even just a nice moderate pace? You could do moderate pace on a bike or a rower or even a cross trainer. So there are things that you can do. One thing that I haven't put on this slide actually, Sugathri, is something called NEAT. Have you heard of NEAT? It's an acronym.
No, not at
We'll
all.
introduce you to it today. So NEAT actually stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is all about trying to increase your body's capability of burning calories, again, throughout the day by performing various different tasks. So it could be walking. You could be getting out, walking to the shops, for example, as opposed to taking the car. This also sounds like another funny one that me and my partner quite often do. We'll go shopping to the supermarket and increase our NEAT just by walking around the supermarket and just having, you know, a bit of a time waste in there whilst we're doing our shopping, especially if the weather outside is crap. But, you know, if we have a look at what some of your day might look like, Sugathri, are you seated? Are you quite sedentary in your job?
Yes. Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
Okay, so this is where NEAT might actually help you. So it's ideally it's performing various daily tasks or activities such as walking, fidgeting, and even small movements like tapping your foot and moving your hands. Maybe for someone like you, getting up out of the desk, those things, I mean, it might, again, it's going to be minuscule. It's going to start allowing you to use or expend a few more calories. So, for example, when I was in a heavy preparation for these competitions, I always bring it back to this point because this is when I was doing the extreme of sort of creating that fat loss or weight loss, if you like. Leading up to the weeks of actual competition, I found myself moving less and my NEAT going down because I was already energy poor. My body was shutting down. I didn't want to move. So I was actually decreasing my NEAT. Whereas really what I could have been doing is increasing my NEAT. And it's funny because it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation that we want the calorie deficit. We want to create weight loss by having and consuming less and expending more. But if you're consuming so little that it doesn't allow you to actually have the energy to move, we need to have that conversation. Why are we eating so little? You know, we want to move, we want to try and increase that. So there's a fine point. And I'll, you know, for you as well, if we've got you in a deficit, I want to know that the deficit is close to maintenance and just slightly under. So yes, we're creating that calorie deficit. We're burning, we're allowing more energy exchange, if you like, because energy cannot be destroyed. It's got to be like transferred. I think you must have heard of that saying. I've not said it in the right way, but we've got to have a transfer of energy. It can't just be destroyed. It's moved somewhere. So for us, it's going to be expended, whether that's taking in less or moving more. We want to find that fine point where we don't just start shutting down. Okay, otherwise, what is the point of living? We may as well just go into a starvation mode, and yeah, that's a whole other topic. But we've got to work, right? We've got to work, we've got to socialize, we've got to enjoy life, and this can't happen if we are feeling so shut down and crap because we are intaking such little calories. Would you like some other examples of ways to increase your NEAT?
Yes, I think that'd be really good.
Okay, so we've got walking. Walking, so short trips. Choose to walk or cycle for short trips instead of driving. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. and try and incorporate more walking in little tidbits throughout the day. Standing if possible, so use a standing desk at work, or find opportunities to sit to stand as well. Do you know another thing that you could do, and it sounds bizarre, but literally the action of sitting and standing, it's almost like doing squats. So that's a great way of kind of increasing that energy. Fidgeting, I'm fidgeting now. I'm fidgeting lots because being sat on this call for however many minutes we've been on it, I have the need to want to expend energy. I do have an active job, but there are periods, believe it or not, as a coach, where I sit at my desk for hours creating content or updating plans and that sort of thing, and also engaging in Zoom calls like this. Household chores, cleaning, gardening. Believe it or not, gardening is absolutely exhausting. Have you got a garden?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And how are the weeds this time of year? Do you have grass? And
horrible.
Yeah. I feel like is a hot topic in this household constantly. We've got to pull the weeds this weekend. No, next weekend. Oh, before the end of the summer. That sort of it's just ongoing. You do it. You think you can rest, and then it rains like it did all July, and they've thrived. It's insane. Short breaks just throughout the day. Get up and move. Again, when you're working from home, there's the bathroom is closer to you. The kitchen is closer to you. Do a few laps around the house, turn the washing machine on, turn it off, like get outside, go and have a stretch in the garden. Take a phone call. If you've got a phone call, take it on your headset. Get up, use a walking pad. Just take those opportunities to move around. And then also, just in terms of our lifestyles, engaging in hobbies that require movement, coming back to dancing, having a good old dance, and then just even being involved in sports as well is good. It's a great way to socialize, being involved in sports. Absolutely, I think that's such a good thing. I wish I made more time for sports as an adult, but yes, I think that's such a great way to socialize and also keep moving. And then, like we said, walk and talk. Instead of sitting while on phone calls, walk around and increase your movement. When you do go to work, or you go to the supermarket, or you go shopping, or wherever, park your car as far away from your location as you can, just to get in that extra bit of walking. And then, of course, lastly, just mindfully thinking about movement. Don't spend hours binging Netflix. I mean, maybe more of that might happen in the winter. We might need to keep an eye on things then. But, right now, I think engaging is really important, actually, for our minds as well, to engage in activities that are less social media scrolling and less Netflix binges. And Sugathri, I don't know about you. Do you watch Netflix?
We don't have Netflix, but we do have other other ones like Amazon and that. But not to leave. I try to leave that towards the weekend, maybe Friday to Sunday mostly. But
that is a good idea. Yeah, one of the things that I do is I actually try to avoid series as much as possible. Or if I feel like I need to watch a series, I watch series I've already seen before, because I think it takes that addiction suspense away, because I find that, I've never watched the Game of Thrones, or I've seen one episode and I've never finished it. I've never gone past one or two episodes. And if you're listening to this, you might think I'm bizarre and go, no, you've got to watch it. It's the best thing ever. Again, when I finished university years ago, I think I was in between jobs, or I think I was coaching gymnastics at the time. So I had later shifts and things. So I, bit more freer with time. And I'm ashamed to say this, but I think I watched Breaking Bad from beginning to end, all series, within 2 weeks.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It was literally an addiction. And when I go back to that, I go, wow, I wasted so much of my time. And I'm sure there are people that have created stats on this stuff, but you waste hours, if not days, if not weeks, if not years. Someone will come up that we've lost years of our lives by watching Netflix series. I'm pretty certain. I actually try and watch documentaries only, or movies, because I feel like if you're going to commit to watching a documentary, and a lot of the time they're usually 45 minutes to an hour long, you'll dedicate that time and watch it, and it's done. You don't have to think about it again. You don't have to click next. You don't have to wait to see what happens to the character in this program. And it's the same thing with films. They've got a start and they've got an ending. There's no more suspense. Series seem to go on like forever. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So when I was growing up, we used to have EastEnders and Neighbours and Home and Away, and those programs are still going on today. Bizarre. I think EastEnders may have even come out before I was born.
Really? Oh wow. Yes, for a very long time.
It was, yeah, a long time ago. So just shows these things don't, we'll always find storylines.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that my parents are still actually addicted to EastEnders.
Yeah.
So funny. Right. I think that is pretty much sums up the topic of, cardio options, or sort of coming back, time-saving cardio options. We've kind of dived in or added a little bit more fruit to this topic. Have you got anything to add or any more questions that you'd like to ask Sugathri?
No, I think the one thing I'll take away from this is the NEAT. I think that was really effective. And like you said, it's so minuscule and you won't notice that you might not be doing, or you might be doing it. But I think I'll be more aware of how much I'm moving, especially during work days when I'm working from home. I do tend to sit for a long period of time. So I'm going to be a bit more cautious and conscious, and try to move a bit more and increase.
Yes. Do you know, I think I might actually add that into our check-in as a question. Have you aware of your NEAT, and have you increased your NEAT, or do you feel like you're considering your NEAT throughout the week? Okay. With that said, we are going to leave this episode here. It's been so nice having Sugathri, one of the ladies that's inside the program, sort of join me for this episode and talk a little bit more about this topic. And it's just so nice having someone to talk to. So if you are listening to this podcast, and you are interested in joining or learning more about the Girl Boss method, please reach out to me. You can find me or at me or DM me, send me a message on Instagram, and that's at Richu Bra. So I'll spell that out for you. RICHUBRAR. And we hope to hear from you or see you next time.